In this video, I'm going to be talking about everything that's been going on in Chicago for the past 4 or 5 months or so. And I'm going to be mostly talking about crime. I'm going to start with that. Over 90% of this video, I'm going to be talking about crime because it's a big issue right now, or has been for years, but especially right now during the pandemic, we've seen a dramatic surge in all sorts of crime, especially gun violence and robberies and um, smash and grabs, uh, carjackings, and the like. So I'm going to be talking about that. I might touch on a few other things, but that's mostly what we talk about crime going on in the city right now. Um, So once again, I made a list of things I'm going to be talking about because it's a lot that I've been keeping track of. I've been trying to keep more on top of current local events since I am running for Chicago mayor. It's very important. Uh, it's always important, but especially now if I'm running for political office. So I'm trying to figure out where to start here because a lot's been going on. Like I said, um, I think I'm going to start with what's been going on a few days ago. So today, as I'm doing this video, it's Monday, February 14, 2022, and over the past weekend, 8 people have been shot. 3 of those 8 have been killed, I believe. And so I'm just going to get into. I'm going to start with the causes. Uh, Now, crime is a really complex issue, as I'm sure most of you are aware, and there's many factors that play into crime. And so I'm going to start with the most important. When I'm focusing on running for Chicago mayor, when I'm going to be trying to propose legislation towards fixing this problem. Now, Governor Pritzker and some others have been talking about um, examining the underlying causes of crime, and he's been making some moves uh, towards finding the underlying causes. And I've been saying that for long since before he became governor, and I've been saying that for years. I mean, that's just common sense. If you look at where crime is concentrated in Chicago, which is mostly the south and west sides of the city, you see a lot of mental illness, poverty, gangs, family dysfunction, community dysfunction, and and things of that nature. And so it hasn't changed much. It's still going on right now. When you see the news, it's mostly black areas that are experiencing the most crime and are doing the most crime. And so, yeah, when I watch these reports and I watch them interviewing uh, the residents, and they say, well, we need more of our political leaders to step up and do more, and uh, and that's partially true, but you need to start addressing what's going on with your own people and your own communities, and start talking about those issues too. Everything I just talked about, the gangs, the family problems, and mental illness. You need to start addressing that too, because that's the root of the problem. That's where it starts. And that's where we need to start attacking these issues at that level. And so yeah. Uh, so yeah, when I'm Chicago mayor, I'm going to focus on uh, things like homelessness, poverty, mental illness, what I've talked about in my other videos, and because that's where this all starts. We need to start looking deep into not just what, but also why. Why is this happening? I believe that's where this all starts. So, yeah. So, Last year we had almost 800 homicides. I believe 4,000, about 4,000 shootings last year. Uh, if I'm wrong about that, I'll double check my facts. But like I said, I've been keeping up with the news, so I believe it's around that number. So I'd like to remind you, there's only 365 days in a year, so that's a lot of shootings, a lot of crime. And I've been hearing from several sources that crime has been going down since around this time last year. And I believe it's way too early to tell that. We're only a month and a half into 2022. It's just way too early to say something like that, or even suggest that crime is going down. Um, I mean, even if it is, it's not really going down that much. I mean, I'm not sure the total number of crimes that's happened so far this year. Um, like I said, a month and a half into this year so far. But I've been watching the press conferences from Police Superintendent Brown, and even he said his officers have been making dozens of arrest charges. So I know that number is it's past 100 by now. And yeah, we're only like what 45 days into the new year. So if it's over 100, it's not going down. It's I believe we're going into our third year of this crime surge, and like I said, it's been happening for way longer than that. But the way it's going up, I believe we're going to our third year because last year they were calling it a crime surge, and I don't believe much has changed from last year. We're still experiencing this crime surge currently in Chicago, and I believe over the state of Illinois too. It's starting to spread to the suburbs, starting to spread to other parts of our state. It's no longer just in Chicago. It's starting to get worse and expand to the state. So the other causes that I would like to talk about is uh, the police aren't the cause of this rising crime, but they are being blamed by a lot of groups. Our aldermen, um, the media, and some of the public too. We're getting a lot of police support, me included. I've always supported the police. I always will, especially during this time. They've really they're doing their job as much as they're really working hard as much as they can, despite all the pressure, despite um, all of that. And but they're going up against a lot of obstacles, or a lot of serious obstacles right now. It's kind of preventing them doing their job as effectively as possible. For example, um, there's a vaccine mandate, so a lot of officers are quitting. There's that, but more importantly, we had almost 80 officers shot at last year, 2021, and some shot at this year also. So they're dying in the line of duty. They're getting sick from COVID-19 and dying from that. Uh, and they're retiring, and they're also quitting in large numbers. We're calling this the Great Resignation now, where millions of people are just leaving their jobs and going to other jobs, or just not going back to work at all. And the police department is experiencing that too. They're either relocating to the suburbs or relocating to maybe other cities, leaving Chicago, or they're just quitting um, and just quitting police work at all. So I would say that's the number one issue. There's a lot of police officers quitting, and that's a problem because they're not hiring a lot of officers. Um, One report mentioned that there were 11,000 officers. What year was I believe that was 2019, and now it's like around 13,000. I mean, I'm sorry. It was 13,000 2019, I believe, and now it's around 11,000. So yeah, like 2,000 officers have left since then, in the past 2 years. So retention is lower than the hiring. They're losing more officers than they're taking in. That is a major problem because the criminals already outnumber the police. There's plenty of gangs in Chicago. Cartel was over 2,000 violent offenders out on electronic monitoring right now. You have to factor that into take that into consideration. So they're way outnumbered by the criminals in Chicago, our police force. So that's a major problem. That's also why I believe we're experiencing the high rates in crime right now because the very people who are supposed to be fighting crime are just outnumbered and going through problems within their own force. And so, yeah, but their job is being made a lot harder by the courts and by our other politicians. I mean, if they're doing their job, then they're criticized by being too harsh, being abusive, which is not the case most of the time. And then when we are having this crime surge, then they're being criticized for not doing enough and things like that. So one way or the other, they're always being attacked. So it hasn't been easy on our police force. And like I said, the courts, that's another issue right now. The courts, they're not, what you're hearing right now is they're not prosecuting as much as they should. They're not prosecuting these violent offenders. I hear a lot about charges and arrests, which is awesome. But in order to have a functionally running criminal justice system, everybody has to be involved, from of course the police and everybody else who's supposed to be helping in our criminal justice system to bring justice. And that's what I'm hearing from our politicians and other city leaders. I put it in quotes because they're not really acting like leaders. So but yeah, they're just putting on this facade because it's election year. That's another thing that's happening this year. It's election year. So they're putting on this facade that, no, we're going to do better. We're going to bring these people to justice. It's horrible what's happening in our city. We're going to work harder to stop it. And because it's election year, so that's what they're supposed to say if they want to get voted into office again. And but what's happening right now in reality is not matching up with what they're saying at all, which is not surprising. Chicago, unfortunately, my city is known for a lot of corruption over the years, and I believe this is part of the corruption. If we have a court system who is saying that, for example, Kim Fox, the Cook County State's Attorney, she's been making more public appearances against election year. So people who have been on the sidelines and not been contributing to any of the discussion or any of the action has just been like coming out of nowhere, and now we're starting to see their faces a lot more. But she's been saying that she needs evidence to be able to prosecute these criminals, and she said that's part of due process, and um, yeah, but what she's been doing is not constitutional at all. You're not supposed to, until you get the evidence, until the defendant is proven guilty or innocent. You're not supposed to. They've already been charged with a crime, so you're not supposed to just release them back onto the streets on electronic monitoring or on bond when they haven't even been determined if they're innocent or guilty. They haven't even made it to trial. They just been charged. So you can't just let them back out into the streets when they're charged with a violent crime. They're supposed to be detained, held there until their trial, however long that may be, especially if they're a violent offender. If they're not a violent offender, depending on what their charge is, there could be some leeway, but if they are a violent offender, definitely not. Especially with all of the offenses that they've been charged with. Like I said, carjacking, smash and grabs, shootings, and things of that nature should definitely not be on electronic monitoring. There's this recent law that just came out this year, um, saying, I forgot what it was called, but it's basically saying if a violent offender is out on somebody's out on electronic monitoring and they break any of their terms and conditions, like they're only supposed to go outside to take care of important business like run for groceries, um, and things like that, and then they're supposed to come back. They're not supposed to, go wherever they want to for however long they want to. But that's basically the freedom that our courts are giving them under this new law, saying that if they break any of the rules for the electronic monitoring and they go outside of their boundaries, they can't be charged with a crime until after 48 hours. So for 48 hours, they have the freedom to commit any crime that they want to. Remember, they're still criminals on electronic monitoring, so there's no guarantee that they won't be committing any crimes while they're on electronic monitoring. And that's what we've been seeing too. They're saying these violent offenders that have been caught, they have an ankle bracelet on, and they were committing a crime as they're on electronic monitoring. So obviously this isn't working. But the courts, they beg to differ. They say that locking people up for 24 hours, all constantly under monitoring, isn't working. Hasn't worked in other cities, and you can't compare to Chicago to other cities. We're one of the most violent cities in the nation, so yeah, maybe we do need to have these types of violent offenders under 24/7 surveillance, because not arresting them after 48 hours uh, and that they've broken their terms and conditions of the electronic monitoring, that's obviously not working either. That's far worse, actually. So that's another problem. Um, like I said, there's a lot been going on, so I'm trying to remember my talking points. Um, so yeah, that's not part of due process. That's not part of justice. You don't just get to twist the words of the Constitution to fit your own agenda. Um, that's not right at all. That's unconstitutional, if anything. Um, Nowhere in the Constitution says that violent offenders should be out on the streets before their trial date, free to do more crimes. So, yeah, it's unfortunate, but until we get some change in our system, until more competent people are elected, then we're going to keep having these problems. And that's another issue I wanted to talk about. Um, so the voters have a part to play in all this too. Why? Because if people continue to vote people in based on skin color, based on sexuality, that's what happened with Lightfoot. She got a lot of attention because she would be the first black lesbian mayor of Chicago. Instead of looking at her track record, I think she was a prosecutor, looking at what she's done in her professional life, that makes her qualified to be mayor of Chicago. And so we need to be looking at things like that. If we're going to elect people into office, they have to be competent. They have to have good character, integrity, honesty, um, values, morals, everything like that. Sexuality, race shouldn't even play a part in electing somebody into an important position as political office where you oversee millions of your constituents. You make decisions based on their daily lives every day. Make legislation, and none of that is related to skin color, sexuality, or any other um, anything else like that. Any other what's the word? Superficial trait like that. So the voters, they haven't been making very good decisions thus far, as in Chicago, um, especially with voting the right people into office. That's why we have Kim Fox. That's why we have Tim Evans, top judge. I forgot to mention him too. Another part of our court system that is failing our our judicial system, because again, not prosecuting. That's why we have Kwame Raoul. He's another talking head who's just come out of being silent after all these months and now just coming out and thinking he's doing something, and he's just talking just like the rest of them. Uh, Lightfoot definitely. So we have all these, and the aldermen also. They've been silent through much of this crime surge. So we have to elect better people into office based on moral values rather than superficial nonsense. Then we won't be having the problems that we are having in Chicago right now. And again, that's why I'm running for Chicago mayor. I believe that I have all those essential character traits and morals that I want to um, uh, not integrate, but put into that I want to, yeah, integrate. I can't find the word right now into our legislation and things like that. And okay, so what else? Like I said, there's a lot going on. I'm trying to go past the 4 or 5 months. That's when I've been really starting to get into trying to stay on top of current local events. I usually just like follow national events. Now, since I'm running for local office, it's really important that I narrow my focus down to my city. If I'm asked any question by the public or the media about what's going on in Chicago, that's really important that I know what's going on. Um, so yeah, but there's just been a lot happening over the past 4 or 5 months, but narrowing it down to crime makes it a little bit easier. But yeah, that's just the gist of it. There's problems going on in our judicial system. Our police are overwhelmed. Another thing is they're having their work days, some of their work days cut out, and so they're being overworked, suffering from burnout. That's another issue. It's a very important issue because that can affect their mental health, and that could lead to a lot of problems on the job if they're being overwhelmed in this way. So that's making the police's job a lot harder than it has to be when we don't have our courts doing their part in prosecuting violent offenders. Um, let's see. What else do we have here? I met, I went through most of these already. Yeah, I mentioned bond. If a violent offender, if they pay a certain amount of bond, then they'll be released to on electronic monitoring or released to whatever. They'll still be out on the street if they pay that. Um, Having the option of bond is a constitutional right, but there are limits. Not everybody should qualify for bond, especially if you just shot and killed somebody, if you just carjacked someone, if you just committed armed robbery. Bond should definitely not be an option on the table for those crimes. Um, but that's what's happening right now. So if there's any further changes to bond bail reform, to 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 these to if there's any other legislation changes um, related to crime, it needs to be in like a in towards like a progressive change. Like there has to be a change that's going to make things better, not worse. So legislation towards focusing on prosecuting and also sentencing, keeping these violent offenders behind bars for a long time. So they can't go out and do the same thing again. I believe sentencing should be another point of discussion in this debate. Okay. So I want to touch again on election year. It is election year. A lot of people are running for office right now, including me. And so, like I said, there's been a lot of politicians and city officials coming out and scrambling to fix all the problems that have accumulated over the past 4 years or so. And that's why all of these task forces that they're creating, everything that they're doing, like all of Pritzker, he just installed a lot of cameras on our highways to catch the license plates of people who've been doing highway shootings. So there's been an increase in those too. And Lightfoot, she proposed an ordinance. I believe it's still being debated in city council, which shouldn't be. It should be passed. But again, that's the tension that we have right now in our government, our local government, which shouldn't be there. But she has an ordinance saying that they'll seize the assets of gangs, and she believes that'll partially solve our Chicago crime problem. And all these things that everybody's doing is just too little, too late. Like I said, they're scrambling election year to get all this stuff done because they think it'll make them look better. But I mean, I'm not a fool. I know what's going on. I'm catching on to what's happening, and that's why none of this stuff is working. That's why it's not as effective now as it could have been if they did this years ago. It would have been much more effective. Like me, when I get into office, I'm going to be taking action from day one all the way to the end of my term, because when I recognize a pattern, it's important that I act on what I'm seeing right away and not wait to the last possible minute when crime and other issues in our city and state gets to such a level where it's where it's uncontrolled now. So that's what we're seeing now with our other city officials. And so I'm not complaining about all the stuff that they're doing. I'm complaining about the time frame that they decided to do all of this in. I mean, it's great what they're doing, but it's too late. So it's not going to work as good as it could have been several years ago. So it's a problem I have there. But yeah, they really need to be removed from office and replaced with somebody a lot more competent. Which, again, I'll keep saying this. That is why I believe I make a good candidate for Chicago mayor. I'm not going to be doing all of these other things that my predecessors have been doing. I really believe that I can make a positive change in my city. And everything that I've been talking about, I'm going to be doing the exact opposite of what has been done, because I believe that's what's going to make a change in Chicago. So yeah, a lot of scrambling going on. A lot of. All right. So what else? Oh, sorry about the long pause there. So a lot of these violent offenders, they have a lot of priors, So they have a long rap sheet, long criminal background. So prior to their current offense, they've been, they have other sometimes violent crimes on their rap sheet, and so they're still out on the streets. So I mean, given that criminal background, they should still be incarcerated. They shouldn't be out on electronic monitoring or bond of all things. And that's the last that should be happening. But it is. But yeah, they have a lot of priors, and so when you add that to their current offense, it's just asking like, why are they free in the first place and not behind bars? So that's another issue. Well, I'll just give an example just to like put in this perspective. So, like if you shoot somebody and then you have other a criminal history that says uh, like you shot somebody before, or you've committed armed robbery before, like then you know what I mean. Like I don't know how else to explain it. I'm just explaining like for people who don't know like what priors are, but yeah, that's basically what's happening. Um, so yeah, they should have been locked up a long time ago. And what else? There was something else I wanted to add. I hate it when that happens. Like my thought just goes away. What else was I gonna say? I don't want to waste too much time on it. Uh, oh, okay, maybe this was it. So we've been seeing an increase in juvenile offenders, and not just that, the victims of these crimes are getting younger and younger, and the perpetrators of these crimes are also getting younger. So we've been seeing kids as young as we've seen babies getting shot in the head. 15-year-old was just shot in Bronzeville. There's been a lot of media attention on that, and yeah. But here's what the problem is. So so like I said, the perpetrators of these crimes are getting younger. So that means we need to be looking into when there's shootings involved. I believe we shouldn't just look into the perpetrator. We should also look into the person who was shot. One of these shootings, they said it was a targeted shooting. So that means the perpetrator and the victim, they knew each other um, prior to the incident. So both parties should be looked into. Like we should see if the person who was shot was in a crime. I mean, in a gang, because that's what a lot of these shootings are. They're gang related shootings, and the stray bullets, they hit the bystanders, or it's a targeted shooting, like one of these shootings were. So just because they're 15, I mean, there are kids that join gangs that are even younger than that. That should be looked into also. If it's targeted shooting, we can't just say, "Oh, rest in peace. He was so young, or she was so young, and was it's unfortunate." There needs to be like action done to see like what happened that led up to this. So we investigate the person who was shot. Where was he and she involved in a gang that led to them being targeted to being shot? And of course, investigate the perpetrator, their background, and everything. But it can't just be. I believe it can't just be the perpetrator. It has to be the victims too, um, because if they have a criminal background and they were shot, then um, there's some discussion to be had about that too. So yeah, the perpetrators are getting younger, the victims are getting younger, and one of the things that Lightfoot mentioned was that we can't just lock these juveniles up and throw away the key. Uh, there has to be rehabilitation. There has to be recidivism. That's another word I've been hearing often too. Luckily, because of my criminal justice courses that I've taken, I know what that word means now. It's basically like kind of like rehabilitation, but it's making sure that uh, the person who's released out of prison, they don't go back to reoffending. So there's programs being put in place to make sure that offenders don't reoffend, go back to prison. That's what recidivism is. I think that's what that is. Um, yeah. But anyway, my point is what Lightfoot was saying. There has to be more rehabilitation. I was locking up juvenile offenders. Uh, yeah, but what about stopping? How about just stopping it before it gets to that point? Um, like I said, there has to be talk about what went on in their families. Uh, are they doing what? Are they in school? Are they staying out of trouble, staying off the streets, staying out of gangs, uh, things like that? So yeah, that's how we stop it from getting up to that point where we have all these shootings and carjackings and whatnot. Uh, so yeah, not too much more to be said about that. So I believe I touched on most, if not all, my points for this video. Oh, I'm already going um, almost 40 minutes. I think this might be the longest video I've ever recorded. So I'm sorry about that. Uh, if you don't, a lot of people don't have time to even watch 20 minutes of a video because I know a lot of people have busy lives and they can't just sit down and watch the video like in one sitting. Um, but I try not to ramble too much. I'm still working on that. Not take too many pauses to make the video longer. Like I said, it was a lot to get through, and I'm trying to get through everything that's been going on these past 4 or 5 months. So I think I've covered like the gist of it. That we're seeing a rise for our third year, this crime surge in carjackings, shootings, smash and grabs, mostly, among other crimes. But that's uh, yeah, and I mentioned the causes, what I believe, and the most important part, what I should have been talking about since I'm running for office, is what I'm going to do. And sorry I wait until the end of the video to talk about this, but what I'm thinking about doing, there's a lot of things already in place, like strict gun laws, background checks, and I talked about that in my other video, why I'm against the Second Amendment. So if I'm elected in office, it's going to be a lot of well, yeah, I'll say anti-gun, strict gun law legislation put into place by me. And yeah, like I said, there's a lot of things put into place, but I'm going to be looking at the underlying causes mostly. And if necessary, I've been talking about putting in, um, if this is still going on by the time elections next year. So if I am elected as Chicago mayor, that we're still having this crime surge, which I believe at this rate might happen, um, then I'll look into possibly instituting a curfew. Um, I know as mayor, I think the governor has the power to do martial law, so I don't think I have. But if I did, I would. I might have to go to the mayor. I mean, whoever's the governor at that point to talk about possible martial law. But there would definitely be a curfew. state of emergency possibly too declared in Chicago. And yeah, that would, of course, it'd be temporary because in the meantime, I need to do something quickly in the meantime to just like take a pause so that I can institute more long term solutions. Like I said, more mental health care, uh, addressing poverty, education. That's another thing I forgot to mention in a lot of dysfunctional Black neighborhoods is there's a lot of poverty, poor education. Maybe I did mention that, but that's leading to this. I believe leading to this increase in crime. So it starts there. So I'm going to be looking at that, and so I can institute long-term solutions that incorporate those aspects. But in the meantime, I want to take uh, action right away. So there would be a state of emergency and curfew declared if I'm Chicago mayor, and crime is still a huge issue among my constituents. So yeah, so the video is already 40 minutes. I think that's long enough. Like I said, I had so much to talk about. I hope I covered everything or most everything that's been going on so far. And of course, there are going to be more videos talking about similar things and my take on what's going on in my city and possibly the state too, but mostly the city. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Not too much to add right now. And thanks for watching.